Hello everyone, my name's Darren, but please feel free to call me Daz. I work for Coca-Cola Europacific Partners and I'm based out of Melbourne, Australia. In my role as the Asset Care Systems Manager, I oversee our Maximo operations for both Australia and New Zealand manufacturing. I've been immersed in the world of Maximo for over eight years now and looking forward to doing it for a lot longer. I'm here today to talk about a project that we embarked on aimed at consolidating some of our daily Maximo reporting and making our business as usual a little bit more streamlined. It's a project that's still in progress, but I'm keen to share our journey with you so far and hopefully gain some insights as how we might further refine and improve our approach. So as I said, I work for a little company called CCEP, or Coca-Cola Europacific Partners. We are proud to stand as the largest Coca-Cola bottler in the world. Annually, we produce 22.3 billion litres of our products for a consumer base of over 600 million people. Our business is spread over 31 countries and it is supported by a network of over 100 manufacturing sites. We are proud of our diverse and vibrant workforce with over 42,000 people representing over 120 different nationalities and communicating in more than 60 languages. At CCEP, no 2 days are ever the same, with endless opportunities to collaborate and win on a global scale. To let you know a little bit more about myself, my name's Daz, as I said. I'm 44 years old, or young, depending on how you look at it, but I'm pretty sure these grey hairs didn't start coming in until I embarked on my journey with Maximo. I've been happily married for 18 years. I'm a father of 2 incredible adult children. At home, I'm outnumbered by my energetic staffy, who's around here somewhere, and an insane cockatoo. Professionally, I've been a part of the Coca-Cola family since 2015, and I've delved into the depths of Maximo for the past 8 years, as I said. Currently, I'm navigating Maximo 7612 whilst investigating our pathway to the mass. I'm active in the Maximo community as one of the leaders of the Australian Maximo user group, where we share knowledge, challenges and successes. As of this year also, I'm very humbled to be recognised as an IBM champion for 2024. My journey as a Maximo administrator has pretty much been a bit of a do-it-yourself project. If I hit a snag, you can bet I was Googling my way out of it at all times. If I was really stuck, I'd raise a tick with the IBM product support team. Those guys and girls are amazing and have definitely helped in my development over the years. These days, I'm a massive fan of the IBM Tech Exchange. This place is a goldmine for someone hungry to learn Maximo, and the tips and tricks there are priceless. I'm also quite fond of the brainstorming sessions and arguments that I have with ChatGPT. It's not always right, but it can get it very close and save you a lot of time. But honestly, the most valuable hack and fix I've come across from catching up with my mates at the Maximo user group. We swap stories, we troubleshoot, and we get a bit wiser along the way. I'm saying all this to remind everyone that you don't have to be a Maximo expert to talk at one of these user groups. You just have to be brave and have a story that you think is meaningful, and you might find that others find it meaningful as well. Let's get on to my story then. Okay, so the heart of what we were up against here is that our team was juggling a bunch of reports every day. For starters, we had a shift report, which is a pretty big deal in our business. It's used for our daily stand-up meetings, and our teams go over it, all the emergency work that's happened over the last 24 hours. It's not just about what broke down. It shows us how much time we spent on repairs, what materials we used, how much labour we consumed, was there anything that needs to be followed up. We look at this 1 page at a time, which works great when we're all together in a room looking at a big screen. Then there's a shift summary report. It's a cut down, quicker version that lists everything out instead of giving that 1 page per work order approach. You can't get as much detail on it, which is the trade-off, but you can review it very quickly. Then we have our This Week report, which gives us a heads up on how we're doing with the schedule, lets us see how we're going, lets us track our craft utilisation to see if everyone's entering in their hours. And then lastly, we have the Last Week report, which is used on a Monday to reflect on how we went last week. Did we get all of our work done? Were all the hours entered? Did we book out materials? And what needs to be followed up this week as a result? All of these maintenance reports can become a bit of a nightmare, as any change in the reporting requirements or business process means potentially changes to all 4 reports. This means maintaining SQL and making sure that the data is correct and consistent across all of the reports. You can see here, just for the month of January 2024, this is how often these reports are being executed across our manufacturing sites. In Australia, that only means 4 manufacturing sites. The numbers are huge because you've got individual users running, scheduling these reports for themselves so they can consume it in a way that's meaningful to them, whether it be PDF or Excel or whatever. So we knew that we had to try and address this because it was becoming quite unmanageable. So we started Project MR. What we did after speaking to the key users is we wanted to find out from them, what exactly do you need in a report that can consolidate all this information into one spot. The main preferences were for a PDF version to be more compact and to be presentable on large screens. They wanted an Excel version also that can be tailored for wider screens and easy analysis. The PDF needed to include some visual charts to support the stand-up meetings and the stakeholders that are there, because not all of them are maintenance people. They really wanted to focus on daily material consumption, making sure that any inventory that had been removed from the store was identifiable and any risks associated with that. In Australia, we have an issue where all of our standard reports use a certain time zone, a certain date query that makes sure that our days are represented from 6 AM to 6 PM. That affected other sites with different time zones to us, so they wanted that corrected. And then a more accurate reflection of craft utilisation throughout the week. The outcome was to build a one-stop shop for all of the users in this one new report called the Maintenance Review. The report can be run for the current week or the previous week now. The PDF version and the Excel version will offer different views depending on how you output it. The PDF version now does include charts to help communicate the message that they need to with their stakeholders in the daily stand-up meetings. We introduced more tables of data relating to materials consumption and also tweaked our existing one-page reports to highlight any risks when materials are consumed. We brought in a different way to review the maintenance plan in the Excel versions. And then what else did we do? Reflected on the issue of the site time zone and came up with a nice solution. And then we revised our craft utilisation approach again to ensure we were capturing not only people that were rostered, but also the people that weren't rostered and still did work to come up with an overall snapshot. So, firstly, we've got the PDF version, and these are just some really quick highlights of how it sort of turned out. The graphs are showing the last 24 hours by location and labour by work type. There is the emergency one-pager focus point, which I'll show in a minute, which shows the last 24 hours, and we've changed the way that materials consumption is highlighted. We've introduced a new weekly summary, which is progressive for the week, so you can see how you're going for the week versus how many are scheduled for the week, and all the same data for every day of the week thereafter. Any work orders that need to be approved or have a follow-up, and any materials that have been consumed. In the Excel version, it's a little bit different because when you're looking at a PDF, you're looking at multiple pages. Now you've got an Excel version with multiple tabs, and you can select and choose which part of the report you want to look at really easily. Other than that, the only thing it doesn't do is the one-page area. Instead, it's replaced by a shift summary, so people can just consume that list of information very quickly. So let's try and do a quick comparison on both, and you might get an idea of how it looks. So this is how the PDF report now opens up. It starts off with reactive detail, highlighting the labour hours that we used on reactive work orders, any downtime that has occurred, and then also the count of the work orders. I won't talk to all of the charts because I think hopefully they're self-explanatory, but it goes through a couple of what happened yesterday and also what follow-ups or service requests need to be addressed. You can see here it goes into this one-page area that we spoke about, which in this report itself there's 39 different pages. Some might think that's a lot, but for the purpose of what they're doing, they want to go through and review the detail that relates to the reactive work order, which is really, really important in our business. So one of the main changes that we made to it to help with the materials consumption, rather than just listing the items that were consumed out of the store, we've also said what was the current balance, is that item on reorder, and what's the min level. So you can see here that the min level is 12, the current balance is 1, so we've highlighted it red to say This should just be double checked to ensure that we do reorder it because we're well below the min. Scooting along just a little bit more, we go into the summaries. As I said before, there's a full week overview of how the week is progressing. We can see so far that there's 91 work orders scheduled and 78 of those have been completed, but for the total week we're looking for a number of 120. And this gives us a quick way to see how we're tracking. There's a similar table here just for statutory compliance as well. Then we just have a focus point on each of the main things we want to understand. Our statutory compliance, how are we going? Green is good, red is bad. So we've got a little bit of work to do, but all of these will be due either today or yesterday. So for the most part, I'm comfortable with this one. It shows us what scheduled work we've missed. So simply just work we've said that we want to do, and so far to date, it has not been done. It gives us an opportunity straight away to address if anything can be done this week. I should also point out while we're here that every one of the work orders is also hyperlinked. So if you want to address something very quickly, and I'm not logged in, so it might take a little bit of time, but hopefully not too long, come on, it'll take us straight to the work order so we can quickly access any information that we want. If I do that again, it should be hopefully much quicker, which it was, so good. Follow-up work orders again, just showing what work orders have been created and where they came from. An overview on craft utilisation, so we can see who's doing what percentage proactive work. It was a requirement for this, so we added up all their work types to figure that out. And then at the end, a table of information, which is pretty much just looking at, we've had receipts or inventory consumed, stuff that's hit our expense account, what location, what type of transaction and how much. And this is for every day of the week. We've got a theory at the moment that we might cut this just back to inventory because the purchasing information or the receipts isn't maybe as relevant because it should be known, but at the moment we threw everything in just to see what it looked like. On the other hand, we've got the Excel version. Now this is the exact same report run out of the exact same code, it just looks different. So this is the exact same summary, there's not much difference there. This is the statutory summary, again, not much difference there. All of this information is here, it's just bigger and consumable. You can see it on a widescreen, nice and easy. This is the shift summary. So for every one of those pages that we looked at before, we can see it all in a list. One of the big advantages of Excel, of course, is that we can bring in the long description and we can widen out the rows to really let everyone just read whatever they want. One of the really cool things that we liked was our day of the week tabs, as I call them, where every day of the week is represented and it's easily sort of reviewed. So if we look at yesterday, we can see how much work was completed and scheduled, and we can also see what reactive work came in. One of the features that we introduced was the ability to sort of blank out or white out lines when two trades were used. So in this case here, I might just zoom it up a little bit. You can see that this is the same work order, but it had two labour records associated with it. So if we had this populated, it'd probably look a little bit messy. So we tried to basically just white it out so you could read it a little bit easier. But then if you were auto filtering on the data, you'd still be able to see exactly what you're looking for. Again, then we went into craft utilisation. It's the same deal, except in Excel, we brought in more information. So there's a day-by-day cut of how it went if you want to be able to review it. With the actual spend, again, the same deal, but we bring in the table of data for people who want to really look at where that money comes from, what work order was associated, who booked it out, those sorts of things. And that's pretty much how it ended up, which was all right. Now if I flip back over here, we can talk about the highlights of it, or the things that I think are pretty cool. So to support that dynamic reporting requirement that we had, we used a combination of reporting parameters and the output visibility in Eclipse BIRT. So in this example where we were looking at the charts, they're not available in the Excel file. That's because we've said that it's only available for the HTML version and the PDF version if the parameter is equal to no. And that's as simple as what it is. There's nothing fancy, there's nothing tricky, but it's just a really, really easy way to be able to create conditions to show something in one format or the other. One of the really interesting things when building these charts in BIRT are not like charts in Excel. In Excel, where I cut my teeth as an Excel programmer, color coding charts is simple. You pick your series and you say, I want that series to be red and that series to be green. In BIRT, it's not that simple. You take what you get. And essentially you have to put your colors in order and hope that the series that you want are present at all times. And in our case, that can't happen because you might not always have reactive work or corrective work. So the way around it is actually to use a little bit of JavaScript and put this, which is on the right, and use the onRender function of your charts, where you can use the series label to set not only the color of the charts, but also the color of the legend, because it has to be done twice, believe it or not, which is perfect. But nice and simple, it works well. You can use it, copy paste it into any chart you've got that requires that sort of treatment. As I said before, we had the daily work order breakdown, and we've got the 7 days of the week represented. The main part about that, which is fairly simple, is how do we get it all separated? And the answer is just page breaks in BIRT. We use I had it here. The answer is page breaks in BIRT, which allow us to loop through, and with the day of the week, it will create a new sheet for each section of that result set that comes through. You saw before when we were talking about how we understand and white out second names that are on a work order. This is done by using altering the SQL and introducing unique row indexes as a part of the join from work order to the labour reporting table, as an example. So we have to ensure that we know that the work order is able to return multiple records due to the nature of the query. We need to ensure that not only that the work order has a unique number to represent it, so we don't double count it ever, but also knowing that a work order can actually span over multiple days pending on the assignment, we need to make sure that each day it's represented as well has a unique number. And that's how then we can achieve that whiteout highlighting that I showed you before. And this is just an example of how it looks when you don't do it. So you can see that a lot of duplication. It's harder to read that way. By whiting out these sections, it just makes it a little bit more easy to digest. The other benefit of these distinct numbers that we put into the work orders, it gives us the ability to sum distinct when we're doing our aggregated functions in BIRT. So BIRT out of the box has count distinct, which is really good and helps us when we're trying to count unique work orders. But when you're trying to sum the values out of those unique work orders, that's a different problem to get around. So by chance, we'd already written this part of it and thought, well, we can reuse it here, and now we can have distinct summing of any of our aggregated numbers like actual material cost or actual labour hours, etc. So it worked really well. There's nothing tricky about it. It's just a little bit of JavaScript and SQL and using the out-of-the-box functionality of BIRT. The big one, which had me stumped for years, I really tried to understand this and Googled everywhere, couldn't find it, raised tickets with IBM support, they didn't know it, so I had to invent something, and I really, really like this one. So years ago when we decided to standardise our reports and stop users from being able to create their own reports at their own site, one of the unfortunate byproducts of that is that they were forced to use our standard time zone, or our standard time calculation that we used, which are similar to what I've got on the screen here. We're basically saying it's between 6 and 6. The problem with that is that when you say 6 to 6 in Sydney, that really means 4 till 4 in Perth, or that really means 5 till 5 in Brisbane. But they don't know that because their time is 6 till 6. So in this example that I've got here, you can see that when I say show me all the work orders that were generated between 6 and 6 yesterday, there's a list here until you hit the red line. And then you see that these would be omitted because they were generated beyond 6 a.m. Sydney time. But in fairness, they were generated within the 6 a.m. to 6 a.m. bracket in the Brisbane time zone. The way I got around it was to use a combination of just reporting variables and a function that I found in DB2 called time zone, and it works really well. In Maximo, as you most likely know, you can associate time zones with a site ID. So in this case, my Brisbane site is associated with the Brisbane time zone. When the report first runs, the first query that we execute is what site are we, what time zone is it in? And then once we collect that, we pop that into a reporting variable called RV time zone. And then as we go along, we punch that value into the time zone function in every query that we do, meaning that every date field is always reevaluated to ensure that we're talking about the user's particular time zone from 6 till 6. So the output looks something like what I've written on the bottom, which is a bit nasty and it does slow it down just a bit, but it certainly makes for some more accurate reporting and less phone calls of people telling me that I've left their data off the report. The last one that I think is cool is the craft utilisation code that we wrote. So it's another one that it's taken me a couple of years to perfect, and this is the best version I've ever written. The problem normally is when you're looking at who's rostered, if you're trying to figure out how much work is happening that week, is that you're looking at something like the calendar and the shift applications, and you're trying to determine which shifts are working, therefore we know which people are working. But it doesn't tell you who wasn't rostered and did work. And then vice versa, if you flip it, you can look at everyone that worked, but if someone that was rostered didn't work, then you don't know about them either. And then you've also got to consider there might not have been a day that was present in that data set, so therefore it won't return in your results. So it was a little bit tricky, but the answer to it all basically came up by using common expression tables, common table expressions, so we could build some individual data sets in the first instance and then use that to build what I call the trade list, so we can definitely see who was supposed to work and work that day. It's fairly simple. We start off with a table that is referred to as the this week table. It gives me 7 days for the current week. Then I figure out everyone that was rostered. Then I figure out everyone that worked via the LabTrans table, mush them all together to create a trade list. And then we start to build out the set so we can see everything we need to see. Were they on shift? No, but they still worked. Cool, then they did overtime. Things like that, which makes it really easy to understand how well the reporting can be received by the users, because we've tested it very thoroughly this time and it hasn't broken. Everyone's been able to get the answers that they like. So I'm hopeful that we've got this one right this time, which is cool. So the final thoughts on it, we've streamlined the process for sure. The process was to retire 4 reports, which I was really excited about, more or meaning less work for me. And the maintenance now is a lot easier. The other cool thing that I noticed since watching people use it is how excited they are. I've written a lot of reports in BIRT over many years, and I've never heard teams talk about a report the way they talk about this report. People are saying that it's really streamlined the way that they operate in the mornings, and all the information's punchy, and they can really get what they need. So, you know, for me, I just like to write the code and put it all together, but it's nice to hear when it actually is doing the job that it was intended to do. The dynamic features for my side were the really cool part, coming up with little tips and tricks to try and make the reports look as fun and sexy as they can be. The considerations moving forward, there's a couple of things I've got on my mind. I definitely know once I'm done, I'm going to have to put some indexes in there just to speed her up a bit. But more so, probably just little tweaks as the users use it. I'll remove some things like the purchase order receipts. I think that could go in time because it's maybe not daily information, but all in all, I think the report's doing exactly what it should. And then it's obviously going to lead into the new area of where else can we replace reports with this sort of approach. So inventory and SOX compliance are going to be probably my next stop, because there's a lot of reports in that area which share similar code. So yeah, that is exactly where we ended up. So if there any questions, or are we good?
Yes, that was phenomenal. What great information. That's an amazing
glad you
report.
think so.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, there are a couple questions. First off, you started to mention at the end performance on this, and that most people are now scheduling the report. Are they scheduling it every day, once a week? And then my second question goes into, are you using a separate report server?
Sorry, we do. So our production server has got 5 JVMs, so we do have the separate report server. The problem is normally is that most people are always running these reports at the same time, especially Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane when they're aligned. what we find now is that they're scheduling less. It's still a little bit early to tell, but they'd be scheduling a PDF version and an Excel version. So now they only schedule the one that they want in some cases.
So when you select the PDF or Excel, is that a parameter that's on the request page that you select?
Yeah. So it's the output parameter as from Maximo.
Okay. And in Excel, is that the XLS or XLSX version?
XLSX version is what we're using now, because with the normal Excel version, you won't get the page break benefits of the sheets. So any report that was originally written for XLS will be converting to this format just to keep it as a standard. And then the plan would be to block the XLS output from Maximo so people can't select it.
Okay. So that's been a problem for years, hasn't it been? When you're exporting BIRT content, sometimes if it's not formatted, it goes to some unexpected worksheets. And
yeah, 100%. The problem is some people will put up with that and not tell you. And you go, oh. And when we went out and asked everyone what they wanted, they were pointing these things out. And I'm like, how long have you been living with this for? Oh, a while. And you're like, I wish you had told me. So I think that all of the requests and the bugbears that people have had, we've addressed, so they get what they want in either version, and it's very consumable, not a drama.
Great. So you talked a little bit about time zones. One of the questions I have, does that time zone impact the Excel where you had it the different days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? So are there different time zone considerations in that split of the days also?
No, because the query deals with it. So the main query that we run to get all of the days, all the data for the week is run once. So when we look at those sheets, they're only page breaks when the day breaks. So when it flips from Monday to Tuesday, we're grouping on that change. So provided that when we're looking at the field that we're considering for that day of the week, which I think for that one is schedule finish or actual finish, colourless, depending if it's there or not. We're considering, was it actually 6 o'clock or 4 o'clock in your particular time zone? Okay. And so it's all dependent on the site ID parameter that goes through, and then the reports are 100% supposed to be tailored to that user's time zone.
Okay. And I think you mentioned that there's 4 plants in Australia, is that correct, or 2 plants?
We've got 4 manufacturing sites in Australia. We've got another site that manufactures the preforms that we use for our plastic bottles, but from a manufacturing perspective. We've also got a small little brewery, but they don't use Maximo. And we've got a coffee roasting business, and they do use Maximo, but not a lot. So when we talk about Coca-Cola, 4.
And so each one of those sites is using this report then?
Yes, the main 4 sites all use this report.
Nice, that's excellent. I loved where you had one work order with multiple labor records associated to it. It was, and then you showed, right? You showed it where the data is all populated, so your mind has so much to consume, right? Then a simple one where you could really focus on the labor records. I thought that was just amazing. I love that.
One of the tricky things though with that, and the reason why I did it, is because when someone says to me, oh, this work order's, I have 2 work orders, and you go, okay, and then you actually find out it's 1 work order with 2 assignments. But if you're starting to delve into a question they might have asked you, that common language still isn't really there, especially because I just talk in tables and attributes, and then they talk about what's important to them. So I really always like the idea of trying to present assignments in a different way rather than group them all together and say, well, these are all the work orders you're doing, and really it's some work orders and a lot of assignments. So this way makes it better. I think it's really easy to consume.
Oh, it's brilliant, really excellent. One last question. In the PDF version, you had some graphs. I think they were called reactive detail graphs, and one of the items that you showed was downtime by location. Mm-hmm. Do you tie the reports that you have in BIRT to KPIs in Maximo or vice versa, or are they measured separately?
It's a good question. At the moment, we're transitioning into a global Power BI standard for reporting. So although have a deep fondness for KPI templates, as you know. We don't tend to rely on them heavily anymore as we look at the maintenance review as our way to check how the week is going and how last week went, and then ultimately for their monthly reporting deck, it'll all be in Power BI to deal with it. So
nice.
Some of them do correlate, and the codes would be, I guess, 95% matched up, with the exception of time zone. Actually, I haven't thought of a good way to do that yet in KPI Manager, but maybe I'll have to have a think. But I think we'll start to head away from the static KPIs, because people nowadays, I find, really want to get more detail. They just don't want to see the percentage. They want to ask questions, and as soon as you do that, it becomes a digging exercise to try and say, well, what was it at that particular time when the KPI was run? So I'm trying to get away from KPIs for things that don't require that level of emotion.
Yeah, no, excellent. That's great. And you got to come back and tell us what you're doing with Power BI at some point.
Yeah, I'll have to try. I was loosely involved in that, but there's other people that are much smarter than me that deal with that sort of stuff. I'll just hand them the data and hopefully they leave me alone.
What you did with this report was absolutely amazing. Great job, Jazz. Really good.
Thanks. I'm glad you enjoyed it.